People always told me turning 18 would feel like freedom, a fresh start, a doorway into adulthood, a celebration of everything I'd become. And at first it did feel that way. There were candles, cake, a card from my dad with a sweet note inside. We took a photo together that morning, me in my oversized hoodie, hair messy, eyes still swollen from sleep, and him with that proud, quiet smile that always said more than words ever could. He handed me an envelope, small and cream-colored, sealed with gold wax. I expected a check or maybe concert tickets. Instead, it was a plane ticket. San Francisco, I blinked. Since when do we do spontaneous getaways? Dad chuckled, sipping his coffee. Since today, it's your 18th birthday, Brooke. You deserve something special. Something about the way he said it, too calm, too deliberate, sent a flicker of uncertainty through my chest. But I ignored it. I'd always trusted my dad, especially after Mom passed. She died when I was 16. 2 years later, her absence still lived in the corners of every room. In the way the house fell too quiet after dinner. In how we both avoided her side of the bed. This trip, I figured, was his way of distracting both of us from the grief that still tugged at our sleeves. So I smiled. Okay, let's go to San Francisco. We arrived the next afternoon. I expected a hotel. Instead, we pulled up to a little cottage nestled in a quiet, tree-lined street. It looked like something out of a movie. White fence, blue shutters, a porch swing swaying slightly in the breeze. Whose place is this? I asked. Dad didn't answer right away. He was already stepping out of the car. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and old books. It was cozy, familiar in a strange way. Too familiar. Dad? I asked again, this time with more urgency. Where are we? Why are we here? He sighed and motioned for me to sit on the couch. And then he sat across from me, hands clasped, eyes heavy. What I'm about to tell you, he began, might change the way you see everything. But I need you to know. I love you. I always have. That has never, ever changed. My heart started to pound. What do you mean? He exhaled. Brooke, I'm not your biological father. Silence. A single sentence, and the ground beneath me cracked wide open. What? I whispered. I adopted you when you were a baby. Your mother and I. We couldn't have children. We were older. The process was private. You were only a few days old when we brought you home. I shook my head slowly, as if trying to erase his words. This is a joke, right? Some kind of birthday prank? He looked at me with eyes full of sorrow. I'm sorry. And that's when I knew it wasn't a joke. It was real. I didn't cry right away. Shock is funny like that. It wraps you in numbness, delays the pain. I sat on that couch, staring at a spot on the wall, while my whole life unraveled in the background. My baby photos, the bedtime stories, the way Mom used to brush my hair while humming off-key lullabies. All of it felt altered, and yet none of it had changed, except me. Eventually I found my voice. Why now? He hesitated. Because you're 18. And because I promised her, your biological mother, that when you came of age, I would give you the choice to meet her. My stomach twisted. She's alive? He nodded. She lives here, in San Francisco, just a few blocks away. I stood up, pacing. This is insane. I know. You kept this from me my whole life. I had to, he said softly. It's what we agreed on. Your birth mother loved you, Brooke. But she wasn't in a place to raise a child. She chose us, your mom and me, because she believed we could give you the life she couldn't. I turned toward him, eyes burning. So now what? I'm supposed to just knock on some stranger's door and say, surprise, it's me? No, he said gently. Only if you want to. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. But I could already feel something stirring deep inside. Curiosity, fear, longing. I'd spent 18 years believing my story began in a small hospital in Portland with a mother who adored me and a father who never once made me feel less than his own. Now there was a whole other chapter waiting to be opened, and I didn't know if I was ready. But I knew I couldn't pretend it wasn't there. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling in the guest bedroom of that strange, too familiar house, replaying his words over and over. I'm not your biological father. She lives here, just a few blocks away. My biological mother had a heartbeat, a name, a face I didn't know. Was she thinking of me? Did she wonder if I hated her? Did she regret letting me go? Or did she hope, every year on my birthday, that I would someday come back? I didn't know, but I needed to find out, even if it hurt. The next morning, I stood in front of a house I had never seen before, yet something about it tugged at a place deep in my chest. It was small, neat, pale green with white trim. There was a wind chime by the porch that sang softly in the breeze, a welcome mat that said, "Home is where the heart is." I wanted to laugh at the irony, Because my heart? It didn't know where home was anymore. My fingers hovered above the doorbell. I almost turned away. But then the door opened. She stood there, holding a mug of tea, eyes widening the second she saw me. And I knew. Before a single word was spoken, I knew. This was her. My birth mother. She didn't cry, didn't gasp or fall apart like I imagined she might. She just looked at me, blinking back emotion, and said, "You look just like her." Her? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She stepped aside. "Do you want to come in?" I nodded. And just like that, I crossed a threshold 18 years in the making. Her name was Laura. She made us tea, though I didn't touch mine. My hands were shaking too badly. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the clock ticking in the background like a slow drumbeat. "I didn't think this day would come," she said softly. "I didn't either," I replied. Then silence, a thick, uncertain quiet that neither of us knew how to break. Until finally, I asked the one question that had haunted me since the day before. "Why did you give me up?" She took a breath, her voice trembling. "I was 20, scared, alone. Your father, he left when I told him I was pregnant. I didn't have support, no job, barely a place to live, but I didn't want to abort. I couldn't." She looked down at her hands. "I spent months searching for the right family. And when I met your parents, your mom and dad, I knew they'd give you everything I couldn't." Tears welled in her eyes. "I loved you, Brooke. I loved you enough to let you go." I swallowed hard. "I never knew." "I know. That was the agreement. I wanted what was best for you, even if it meant staying away." It made sense, but it still hurt. We talked for hours. She showed me photos, old ones blurry and faded, of herself pregnant, holding me in the hospital. There was one of me swaddled in pink, her arms cradling me, her face both radiant and broken. "I only held you for an hour," she said. "Then I kissed your forehead and said goodbye." My throat tightened. "Did you ever try to find me?" She nodded. "Every year on your birthday, I'd light a candle. I wrote you letters, even though I couldn't send them. I asked your dad, your adoptive dad, if I could meet you one day. He said, when the time was right." I shook my head slowly. "I feel like I don't know who I am anymore." She reached across the table, not to grab, not to force, but to offer. "I know this is overwhelming. You don't have to figure it out all at once. I just want to be here, if you'll let me." And for the first time, I saw the same softness in her that I used to see in Mom. Different, but familiar. The kind of softness that isn't weak. The kind that breaks, but rebuilds. Later that afternoon, we went for a walk. The air smelled like jasmine and salt. She told me about her life, how she became a social worker, how she volunteered at a women's shelter, how she never married. "I never had more kids," she said quietly. "Part of me always felt like I already had one." That undid me. I stopped walking and turned toward her. "You never forgot me." She shook her head. "Not for a second." We stood there in the middle of the sidewalk, two women, once strangers, now tethered by something deeper than blood, and I let her hug me. Not fully, not completely, but enough. That night, back at the cottage with Dad, I sat by the window while he made us dinner. "You met her?" he asked. I nodded. He didn't ask for details, just said, "How are you feeling?" And I didn't know how to answer, because I felt everything. Sad, confused, angry, relieved, grateful. "I don't know," I admitted. "It's a lot." He came over, sat next to me, and placed a hand on my shoulder. "No matter what happens," he said, "I'm still your dad. Always." And I leaned into him, because even if I was shattered, I knew I was still loved. Over the next few days, I saw Laura again, and again. We took it slow. Some visits were heavy, filled with questions and answers I wasn't always ready to hear. Others were lighter. Lunch in the park, laughing over dumb jokes, moments of ease that surprised me. I learned that she played piano, that she loved thunderstorms, that she still had the tiny pair of baby socks I wore home from the hospital. And each moment, each conversation stitched a new layer over the old wound, not to erase it, but to honor it. Because some truths don't need to be hidden. They just need to be held gently. It's funny how life feels different once you know where you come from. Not because everything suddenly makes sense, but because the noise quiets, the ache dulls, and the questions stop holding power over you. That's how I felt 6 months after my birthday. Like I had stepped out of a storm and into a clearing. Not untouched, but undeniably stronger. I kept in touch with Laura. At first it was casual, texts, postcards, the occasional video chat. But over time it became something more. We developed a rhythm. Sundays became our thing. Little check-ins, stories about our week, shared playlists, even awkward jokes about how she still couldn't believe I liked pineapple on pizza. She didn't try to mother me. She just showed up, consistently. And that, I realized, was what I had needed all along. Not a replacement. Not answers. Just presence. With Dad, things deepened too. After everything came out, I think he feared there'd be a wall between us. But the opposite happened. Now that there were no more secrets, we talked more honestly than ever. About Mom, about his fears, about how he'd sometimes sat in the nursery at 2 a.m., terrified he wasn't doing enough. I told him the truth. He did more than enough. He gave me a foundation that no DNA test could ever touch, and I told him I loved him, not as the man who raised me in place of someone else, but as the only father I ever had. On my 19th birthday, something beautiful happened. I got 2 birthday cards in the mail, one from Dad and one from Laura, each different, each full of love. And I realized I didn't have to pick. I could hold both. I could love both. And in doing that, I could finally start loving myself too. Not the confused girl who didn't know who she was, but the woman who had seen the broken edges of her story and chose to make something whole anyway. Later that year, I applied to a university in California, not just to be closer to Laura, though that was part of it, but because I wanted something new. A new city, new energy, a new version of me. Dad helped me move. We laughed about how I brought way too many shoes and not enough notebooks. He cried when he hugged me goodbye. So did I. But it wasn't a sad cry. It was grateful. Because not everyone gets a father who loves without condition. And I had 2 parents who, in different ways, gave me that love. Life in California was slower, but also more alive. I joined clubs, took art classes, made friends who didn't know my past and didn't need to. And some weekends, I'd visit Laura. We'd hike, bake, talk for hours about everything and nothing. One evening, she showed me a letter, one she had written to me the day I was born. She kept it folded in a small tin box under her bed. It said, "If you're reading this someday, know that you are not a mistake. You are a miracle. You are loved so deeply by a woman who let you go not because she didn't care, but because she did." I held it in shaking hands. Then I hugged her, really hugged her, because I finally could. Time passed, and something inside me shifted. I stopped looking for the missing pieces of my identity. Not because they didn't matter, but because I'd already found what mattered most. Choice. The choice to forgive. The choice to build. The choice to love with open hands, not closed fists. I stopped being defined by what had been kept from me and started living by what I had created for myself. Now, when people ask me about my parents, I smile. My dad raised me, I say. My birth mom gave me life, and both of them made me who I am. Sometimes that confuses people, but I don't explain further. I don't have to. Because I've made peace with the whole story, even the parts that hurt, especially those. One evening, I sat by the ocean, just me, a notebook, and a breeze that smelled like salt and possibility. I wrote, "My name is Brooke Burke. I was born from love, raised in love, and now I live in it every single day. I am not broken. I am not lost. I am whole." I closed the notebook and watched the waves roll in, steady, beautiful, endless, just like the love I now carry inside me.